Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to the Ted Manila Information Show, or just TMI for short. I am Manila Chan. That over there would be Ted Rawl. We are live, of course, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. So, guys, please be sure to like and follow the show. We hit our first milestone. I just want to say thank you all on YouTube for hitting that 500 and over milestone. The next milestone
514.
Ooh, look at that. Look at that. So I think, Ted, what this tells us is that people don't want that straight-laced, button-down morning news program.
Is that what it says?
That's what it says to me. I mean, we're only about 3 months. We're 3 months old.
If that straight-laced, button-down news program dropped below 514, then I would believe that.
So, we're only 3 months old, and we've hit that milestone on YouTube, and then you add the rumblers and whoever else is tuning in. We're freshly, linked up to X now. So, for a 3-month-old little baby show that we are,
that's
just
true.
A scrappy little show.
If we were cats, we'd be kittens that were almost hairless at this point still.
Yeah, we're a very infant show. And I think we're growing at a nice, steady pace, and hopefully it keeps growing, and that this can be, an actual gig for us and a real job. Because we still
just
haven't.
Want the show to go on. That's all.
We haven't bounced back from. Yeah, we haven't bounced back yet from the Biden layoffs. I'm going to call it that. So that's why Ted and I are here. It's the big censorship layoff. So with everybody's support, whether it's monetary, sharing us on social media, or just clicking the like and subscribe buttons, that's going to help us tremendously crawl and scratch our way back from the Biden censorship layoff that we both experienced at the same time. But yes, warning, we are not straight-laced and we do drop F-bombs. So on today's show, we're gonna talk more broadly about the political situation here in the United States. And we say the duopoly or whatever, but one of the duopoly has new leadership, and it just sounds like the new boss is the same as the old boss. Ted,
That's undeniably true. No one would say different. No one.
Yeah. So
we're talking about the Democrats are dispirited and depressed, but we don't really care about that. The question is, can they be saved at all? And
they don't deserve to be saved, and they
we're going to get into
to be
that.
Depressed.
Well, they certainly don't. No one deserves anything, but I mean, the question is, do they deserve to be saved? I don't know. I don't. That's true. No, but they don't. But can they be? And if so, how would it look?
I hope no, because look, once upon a time in the 1800s, the early 1800s, the Federalists went away.
Oh yeah, the 1800s.
So I mean, yeah.
Yeah, the Whigs. Also, the Whigs went away.
Yeah, that went away. So why
parties
not these guys?
Parties can and do go away. I mean, I think more likely anyway, because of the way that the system is set up. The question really isn't whether it will go away. The question is whether it will be viable again. It's entirely party. Like we see in Japan, for example, where you can have a minority party that just never wins, right? Like ever.
Well, like the Communist Party
the Washington Generals,
in Russia,
right? Like that.
They're in the Duma. I think there's like 4 of them.
They're in the mix, but they're just not. They're not going to win. Yeah. It's like that.
They're there.
And so is that the fate for the Democratic Party in the not so long run? I mean, it could be.
Yeah,
it could be.
We'll debate the subject with our buddy
Scott is coming on.
Your bestie, Scott Stantis.
Yep.
So
he's been dying. He's chomping at the bit to talk about this. He
loves this stuff.
Yeah. He's really into it. He's been thinking about it a lot.
The actual saying, isn't it champing at the bit?
No, it's chomping. Is it?
Everybody says chomping. I think it's actually champing.
Wait, it is? I thought it was chomping at the bit because it's like a horse's, the bit is in the horse's mouth.
No, you would think so.
And so he's chomping.
It's champing. The actual thing is called champing at the bit.
Is that true?
It's an idiom that means to be eager or impatient for something. But it comes, the etymology behind it is.
I want to know the etymology.
Something with the horses, and they champing. They're champing.
Huh.
Horses champ. Apparently.
Horses be champing, not chomping.
They be champing.
All
yeah.
Right. All right. Okay. Well, I'm really glad that. Okay, Robbie's saying chomping. He says you're wrong.
No, the actual idiom is champing. And I have actually thought about doing this, Ted, because, well, like you, one of your parents was an immigrant. Both my parents were immigrants. And although you and I are both native English speakers, like for me, like you're bilingual, aren't you?
I am bilingual.
Enough. Yeah. Yeah. You're
no,
bilingual.
I mean, definitely. My vocabulary is not really more than 11th grade. I mean, like I couldn't like in other words, like if I'm watching French television, for example, and they're talking about the elections or politics, or let's say the stock market or something like that, there's going to be a lot of idioms and a lot of like acronyms and a lot of stuff like that. I'm just not, like you just think about like a 11th grade English speaker words here in the U.S. would not know things like what's the DNC or the Fed.
Right.
Like stuff like
for
that.
Me, same thing in Lao and Thai. Like I can speak and get by and carry a conversation. I'm totally illiterate. However, when it gets to really complex words, like if you're like legal mumbo jumbo, that I'm out.
Oh yeah, no, forget it. Like I have a French bank account, and it's like when I have to deal with my French banker, it's like, oh my God. All I can say is thank God for Google Translate. Thank God for that. I'm like, est-ce que vous pouvez écrire tout ça? Can you write all this? And then I just like cut and paste it.
Oh, see, you're cheating. Yes. So for me, because I grew up in a bilingual household, I didn't hear, because my parents were not native speakers, obviously, and not even from a Western language, like a Germanic language, right? American idiom.
Or you mean a Romance language?
A Romance, right? What the languages which
like
American
Italian,
English
Spanish,
is based on.
Italian,
yeah, like where you can kind of learn American English and it's easier to learn. So these idioms were a second or third language for me, basically, and I had to kind of learn them growing up because I would hear my friends' parents say them or whatever. I go, what does that mean? And that was before the interweb.
Can you write in Lao?
No, totally illiterate.
The writing is awesome. I mean, Burmese and Lao have the coolest looking writing. I mean, there is nothing cooler. I mean, lots of really cool languages out there. Love Sanskrit, love Arabic, but nothing beats those Southeast Asian languages.
We're still trying to learn English, Ted. You and I both, apparently, as bilingual children. So yeah, that's my whole point, is that I actually thought like, hey, I should do like a daily English idiom for, on Red Note. And I know producer Robbie's probably going to like that idea because, if we're doing like a foreign exchange, right, between the Chinese and Americans, I thought, I wonder if some of the Chinese would like to learn these American idioms, like champing at the bit. Where does it come from?
Well,
what does it mean? When do you use it?
William Safire, you know who he was, of course, the great linguist and columnist at the New York Times, who had the On Language column in the New York Times Magazine. According to NPR, he weighed in on this champing versus chomping matter back in the 1980s. He came in at chomping. He said to spell it champing when most people would say chomping is to slavishly follow outdated dictionary preferences. Manila Chan.
Yeah, that's.
So are you into following outdated dictionary preferences?
Yes, because it's champing. Because I think it's a horse thing. I have to look into it more, but that's my debate. And it's something from. What do they call that? From people that do Ted.
What do what?
Do horse stuff.
Equestrians.
Equestrians. It's the equestrian.
I was going to say
language.
not people who like do horses. That's a different thing.
Yeah. Wow. That's a different.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of equestrians. They're like super equestrians. They're like too equestrian. They're way too equestrian. They're illegally equestrian. Did you know that I was reading that this is such a problem that even out in remote areas, people have to have like who have forces. They have to have motion detectors, cameras, and lamps in their barns, and they have to lock everything up carefully because perverts be sneaking in and getting busy with like Bessie or whatever her name is.
No.
Or his name or their name for like for intersex horses.
All I know is in college, one of my professors made sure to correct me and say it was champing, and it was an equestrian lingo of some sort that horses champ.
Right.
That they.
Well, okay. Well, no, clearly so that is the original old school way to say it. So
right.
Depends.
So,
yeah.
All right. With that, let's head to some headline news, shall we? Because this really wasn't news, but it is weird and interesting.
Mexico and Canada have negotiated with the United States to delay Trump's tariffs for at least 30 days. In separate announcements on social media, both countries' leaders announced plans to say that they will fortify their borders with the United States to try to keep fentanyl and other bad hombres from coming in. China, however, did not reach any agreement with the United States, maybe because they don't have a border with the United States. I don't know what they could do. At midnight last night, another 10% tariff went into effect. China responded by imposing retaliatory tariffs on our goods. This is a 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas, and 10% on crude oil, agricultural machinery, and some cars and trucks. Meanwhile, by agreeing to a deal, Canada and Mexico have given Trump what he wanted. That, according to Business Insider's Catherine Lee and Huiling Tan. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum says that Mexico will send 10,000 of its National Guardsmen up to the U.S. border to try to keep drugs from coming into the U.S. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said it was reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, and they're going to blow $1.3 billion on this crap. Both leaders specifically referenced stopping the drug fentanyl, which Trump previously highlighted as part of his motivation behind the tariffs. Despite the theatrics, the delay of tariffs on Mexico and Canada validates the long-held belief that the trade plans were merely a negotiation tactic or gambit. Many on Wall Street view the tariffs as a way of trying to get better trade terms, and maybe this really just was about fentanyl. I mean, with Donald Trump, no one really ever knows what's going on in his mind, right? It's the madman theory. You know about the madman theory.
Yeah. Well, for Trudeau to, 1.3 billion for Trudeau to cough up as he's on his way.
It ain't nothing.
That's not insignificant as he's on his way out, which
right,
I think is also kind of weird, right? Like,
although
I feel
argue
like
he's on his way out, so he doesn't care. But
so he's like, fuck it. It's like, whatever. Okay. Yeah. That's true too. But, I would be pissed if I was a voter in Canada, if I was Mike what's his last name? From yesterday?
Oh, Deatter.
Mike Deatter. If I was Mike Deatter.
Think of the snake, the adder that Cleopatra used to kill herself.
So if I was Mike, I'd be less calm today to find out that the prime minister just decided, yeah, okay, Donald, I'll give you $1.3 billion worth of soldiers at the border. Mm-hmm. When honestly, there's
not really much of a problem going on there.
No, there are a few illegals that come through from the northern border, and
there's a lot more illegals coming from the United States into Canada across that border. They should worry about us.
Right. People actually die. Like, more than anything, I think their northern border patrol needs to look for the migrants or whatever.
The migrants
are going to die.
They transit through the U.S. often and then continue on into Canada.
And
they die in the snow.
They look
horrible.
out for people freezing to death. Not fucking fentanyl.
Getting eaten by wolves
in the north. Like, that's the shit. Like, bears and wolves and shit, and just
all of Robbie's neighbors. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, producer Robbie's like, yeah, that's my backyard.
Those are my pets.
But to be fair to Mexico, and about Mexico rather, coming from a southern border state, I will say, and I have sources that have told me some stuff from the mean streets of LA, that China often uses Mexico as the back door to bring in the raw materials for fentanyl and stuff.
That is known.
So
that is a known thing.
So and again, I have sources that I trust. I'm not verifying, obviously, because I'm not there, but these are sources I've known for a very long time that have tentacles into the drug trade. We'll say the illicit pharmaceuticals.
Your friends are scoundrels. They are drug dealers and users. Just say it.
So,
and by the way,
law enforcement.
And if they have that kind of money, tell them to support the show.
They're not law enforcement. I'll say that.
Right.
I won't divulge.
They're on the other team, maybe.
I won't divulge, but they are not law enforcement, and they can confirm to me how easy it is to bring this across the southern border, just cruising back up to Southern California. Yep. Not a problem. And that's where, more than anything, Trump needs to, push on this lady, Claudia Sheinbaum, and not so much like lay off Justin Trudeau. Now, I'm no fan of Justin Trudeau, but really the problem is
come on, you love his blackface gambit at the party.
So sexy. I mean, he is age appropriate. If I were single, I'd be like,
his father was
Fidel Castro,
such a coxman. Pierre Trudeau. Yeah, he was like
Fidel Castro.
Maybe, but not really. But Pierre Trudeau, his father, was like he was definitely a gunslinger of the old school, and he was able to, he dated. Didn't he date like Anne Margaret and stuff like that? I mean, he was like really, if memory serves. I mean, he was a star of the 70s, like kind of like big swinging dick, no question.
Yeah. I don't know. All I know is Justin is a dork.
Yeah,
he was like
the apple
a theater arts nerd.
Fallen off the tree, rolled down the hill, fallen into the subway, gotten hit by the subway.
He's like a big pansy dork.
Guy. Yeah.
He's a big pansy dork that probably can't change his own tire.
He started out like with a lot of, there was a lot of promise. I remember like 10 years ago, people were like,
I feel like his wife
Justin
would
Trudeau.
change the tire.
Yeah,
a lot of
when
Ted, this is
when
politics.
his marriage fell apart, it's like she cut off his dick. He basically
look. I feel like
she got his penis in the settlement. That's what happened.
Oh, I'm fairly sure you're right on that. Just like Mayor De Blasio and his wife, weird divorce, same time.
She got the penis too.
I just never fell for this guy's antics. He doesn't do it for me. But in the world of politics, just like people here say AOC is hot, it's because we're looking at the world of politics. And
honestly, she's not ugly by any means.
No, she's not.
She's not hot. I mean, she's I'd say she's like average. But the thing about
look at the pool of
people.
Her
voice, oh my God.
That's terrible.
Voice is super important to me. I mean,
she's terrible.
I could never really be with anyone with an annoying voice and
right? She's kind of high pitched.
Can you imagine if she is.
Oh,
I mean, can you imagine like waking up next to that and she's telling you to change the kitty litter or whatever? Like,
Anyway, but this is Justin Trudeau. Like I said, for world leaders, I guess that's why women were fawning over him 10 years ago, and then they got to know him.
Getting to know you.
We got to know him, and we're like, oh, you're a douchebag. Like, but people
we're on headline.
Blues.
We're on headline 1. We got to go.
Baby blues.
We got to keep going.
Not for me. Not my thing. All right, let's move on.
All right. Trump is meeting today with Netanyahu. The two bros are going to meet right after 4:00 this afternoon in the Oval Office. James Jeffrey, hopefully, Bibi will wipe all the blood off his hands before he walks into the Oval. James Jeffrey, veteran diplomat who served under Trump's first term, says that he expects Trump to press for a permanent ceasefire that paves the way for normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, where officials have first said they insist that there has to be a Palestinian state. That's anathema to some in Bibi Netanyahu's governing coalition, threatening his political survival. The ceasefire agreement went into effect January 19th. It contains 3 stages, starting with the 6-week pause in fighting, which we're currently seeing right now. As part of the first phase, Hamas was expected to release 33 out of the 98 hostages that still are remaining in exchange for the release of hundreds of Palestinians in Israeli detention. One big asterisk here, we don't know how many of those hostages are actually alive. Apparently it counts if they release your corpse. Netanyahu will also be listening closely to better understand Trump's position on Iran. Israel is reportedly considering a military strike against Iranian nuclear facilities. I guess Iran doesn't listen to the show or read the New York Times or read the news. They don't really know this is coming. So everybody, shh. Despite some of in his own party previously voicing support for Israel's military retaliation, Trump hasn't been as direct. Asked if he would support such a thing, Trump said on January 23rd he wasn't going to answer, adding that it would be really nice if that could be worked out without having to go that further step. So Trump obviously doesn't want to see that. He's generally, his instincts are generally against escalation, against militarism, whenever possible. He's certainly not. He's willing to do it, but it's like it's not his first go-to.
I would agree.
I think, and so. We'll see what happens there. I think he's obviously going to look. I think I totally get ceasefire stage one. I understand it, although I don't understand really why the Palestinians are bothering to go back to their quote unquote homes, 90% of which are gone. I mean, you're going back to, rubble.
You're hoofing it. You're hoofing it by foot
to your rubble.
To rubble.
There's some, look, honestly, I would love to get a Palestinian person in here to talk about it, because I assume this is what this is really about, is to avoid another Nakba, to avoid being pushed off the land. And basically they're like, we will not leave this land no matter what.
Well, that's kind of what's happening in Los Angeles, right? Like all the people returning to the Palisades and Altadena, and they know it's rubble. At least they're not walking, they're driving to it. But there's a land grab underway right now in Los Angeles. Well, that's
just beginning, really, but it'll get worse. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's probably what's going on. But it's still like, we'll see. But I don't see how first of all, I think everyone who thinks that the Saudis are going to be, that there's going to be a Palestinian state, and that it's not going to be Hamas, and that they're going to be able to have normalized relations with Saudi Arabia, they are smoking so much whatever. They're getting that sweet fentanyl from Mexico. They are crazy. It's like not going to happen.
Like this dude right here. Don't we all want to be besties with
man.
Sheikh Bonesaw?
Man, just don't go to the consulate in Istanbul.
Just saying. I mean, I don't know what else is there to say. I mean, the last time Bibi was in town last year, I was covering the protest against him, and there were tens and tens of thousands of people right outside of Capitol Hill. That's where I was posted all day, so I watched it happen. But I mean, Biden, just like Trump, is gonna allow him to get up there and just ramble on like Bibi does. Nobody stops him. He made comparisons, not to say that October 7 wasn't a horrible thing for them, right? I mean, horrible shit happened. But for them to compare that to Pearl Harbor or 9/11, for Bibi to do that was kind of like, come on, bro. Like, that's hyperbole much. And then, everybody here in the U.S. is inside the halls of the Capitol. They were all clapping and cheering, and then tens and tens of thousands of people were outside protesting. So it's going to be the same thing over and over. I'm just thankful that I'm not outside in the freezing cold of like 38 degrees today.
Yeah, that's not.
To have to cover
that's not that cold.
Yeah, I know. But I'm a wuss. I'm from California. I fare better in the climate where Sheikh Bonesaw is from, because
and you used to live there.
I used to live there, so I know I fare better. I'm made for that weather.
Well, it's dry, anyway. That's the only thing I have to say about it. I think it's a wretched part of the world.
It's yuck. All right, let's go on to the next one before Scott gets in here.
All right, let's do that. Okay, the Senate Finance Committee is going to vote right now as to whether or not to advance RFK Jr.'s controversial nomination to lead Health and Human Services. It would take just one Republican vote to sink him, assuming that all the Democrats vote against him, which they will, unfortunately. Of course, they all voted for Marco Rubio. I'm going to say that each and every time this comes up. You all voted for Marco Rubio's. He's the maniac. He's the one with the big brainworm. All right, the neocon brainworm. Anyway, all eyes are on Senator Bill Cassidy. He's a Republican from Louisiana and a doctor who last week during the hearings for Kennedy, expressed deep concerns about the impact of Kennedy's comments about vaccines, saying on a 2023 podcast, quote, that no vaccine is safe and effective. While Kennedy's nomination hinges on a single Republican vote in that committee, it's possible that the Senate Finance Committee could hold a second vote to send the nomination to the floor. That would allow the full Senate to decide if Kennedy should get confirmed. If he fails to get that support, there are two other options. The panel could report his nomination out of committee unfavorably or without a recommendation, although that too would require a majority vote. Or John Thune, who's the majority leader of the U.S. Senate, could try to advance his nomination on the floor, but that would require 60 votes, which Republicans are not going to get because they would need a lot of Democrats to help out. Mm-hmm. Trump says that he called senators who have concerns about Kennedy. J.D. Vance has also quietly been lobbying senators to line up behind Kennedy. Of course, the vice president is also the Speaker of the Senate, so he is going to be casting. He has a lot of weight there. So we'll see what happens there. I do not know how this is going to go. If I had to bet 55-45, in other words, just barely, I'm going to say he's going to get out of committee, and Bill Cassidy is being leaned on hard by Trump world, and he can't. Does he really want down there in deep red Louisiana to be the guy who sunk Trump's first nominee to go down? I don't think he wants to be that person.
But the question is, what is it that Dr. Cassidy wants, right? Like, why is he pushing? Because Cassidy is as much pro everything CDC as was Dr. Fauci, right? So that's if you read his comments regarding COVID, read his comments about anything, he's as down the line with Anthony Fauci as any other doctor that's willing to testify on Capitol Hill, because I don't know, they're all backed by big pharma. They're all afraid to lose their funding. They're all, I don't know. I don't know if it's an ethics thing. I don't know if it's,
or maybe they honestly believe it,
or maybe they believe it. And I'll tell you, most of the doctors that I know are that way as well. And I can't confirm whether or not it's because they truly believe it or because they don't want to. They don't want to malign the industry that they're in, is some of the, the reasoning that I can drudge up in my head. But what is it that Dr. Cassidy wants? Like, why is he pushing against?
This is not about what Dr. Cassidy wants. This is about how Dr. Cassidy can be pressured by the Trumpies to just shut up and go along. You don't think it's something that what they're going to say is they're going to say, you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, look, you're just a committee guy. Let the Senate vote. We're not asking you to make him HHS
right, like don't hold up.
He's not all you're. Just don't be an obstructionist. Let us have a vote. Right. If it fails, it fails. But let it go to the full Senate. That's what he's going to be leaned upon. And then it's kind of like, do you want to be primaried? How do you how vengeful Trump is? So that's it.
I think that'll be it.
I think and in the end, either he really, if he votes no. I mean, I guess you'll have to say, for whatever reason, that's a badass move, but it'll be dangerous for him.
Yeah, I think it'll get on the wrong side of the Trump agenda, and
no question, deep. Yeah, I mean, basically, he'll be the Joe Manchin of the GOP.
Yeah.
All right. An international panel of 14 neonatal and pediatric specialists raised grave doubts about the evidence used to convict the British nurse Lucy Letby. If you remember this, she was found guilty 2 years ago of murdering 7 babies at the hospital where she worked. In a dramatic news conference in London, the chair of the panel, Dr. Shu Lee, a neonatologist from Canada, said that an extensive independent review that he chaired found no evidence whatsoever that the nurse Letby had murdered or attempted to murder any of the babies in her care. He also highlighted damning findings pointing to serious errors in medical care at the unit where the deaths occurred and to chronic failings in the management of neonatal conditions. He said that some of those deaths were preventable. Our conclusion was that there was no medical evidence to support malfeasance causing injury in any of the 17 cases at the trial, Dr. Lee said. In summary, we did not find any murders. The review is significant because it was carried out by some of the most prestigious and respected neonatal and pediatric specialists on earth. The experts were allowed to access all of the available medical records related to the babies, and they delivered their assessment pro bono. The panel underlined the serious pre-existing conditions of some of the babies, and in several cases, the specialists found significant errors in the treatment or care of the kids. Ms. Letby, 35 years old, was sentenced to what the Brits call a whole life order in 2023, meaning that there's no chance for parole. She would spend the rest of her life in prison after being convicted of killing 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 more at the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital in northwestern England in 2015 and 2016. She has always maintained her innocence, and now that appears to be true, and yet she remains in prison.
I did not follow that case. I just remember
it was a
reading
huge deal, killer nurse and all that.
Yeah, I remember the headlines, but I didn't look too far into it. It's just egregious sounding with so many. So I don't know. There are a lot of questions that you need to pose to whatever the British medical system is called. There's what do they call it? The
NHS.
NHS. The NHS.
National Health Service.
Because there seems to be an increasing rate of baby deaths there, as well as, not that long ago, the whole AIDS blood transfusion story broke not that long ago, a couple years ago, right? And that the NHS knew about it. And so, as Dr. Shu says, that he found no wrongdoing or whatever, and maybe the case deserves to be looked at again. Well, clearly, and maybe there was a miscarriage of justice,
Well, clearly it needs to be looked at again. I mean, there's no question about that.
Maybe. I don't know what that would be. I didn't follow the case, like I said. So all I can tell you from my experience with people in the medical community is I know a doctor, a neurosurgeon, who admitted to me that they had a number of times Dr. Kevorkian people.
Old people?
I didn't ask.
I know that happens a lot. I know that happens a lot.
As mercy killings.
Yeah, they do that a lot. It's typically with morphine. It's like, oh, so if this amount would just be for your loved one to feel no pain, but this extra amount would really wink, wink, nudge, nudge, make sure that your loved one really, truly feels no pain. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I mean, I'm not kidding. That's really what they do.
Freaked out. Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's really routine. I mean, yeah. I mean, I know they wanted to do that to my mom at the when she was at the nursing home toward the end of her life, and they wanted to off her. They were literally not giving her any liquids or water. And she was begging for water, and then I wandered in, and then I heard on the speakerphone the lady go, "No water," and then the nurse goes, "The son is here," and she's like, "Oh,
here's water."
Okay, yeah, disgusting.
Awful. No, that's just disgusting. In this case, these are like I said, the neurosurgeon that I knew specifically told me there were a handful of instances.
It's not a handful. They do it all the time, especially with old people.
At that point, he was a fairly young-ish surgeon back then. And by the way, breaking news: the Senate panel did advance RFK Jr.
As Ted Rall predicted, but not confidently, only by 55-45. But still, it's not like just like I called it, but it's good. It's like as I called it, not confidently. All right.
They're moving him.
I didn't really, I didn't put I didn't slap my dick all the way on the table. I put just the tip up there. Anyway, all right, here we go. Cognitively normal human brain samples collected at autopsy in early 2024, a year ago, contained more tiny shards of plastic than samples collected 8 years before, according to a new study. Cadaver brain samples contained 7 to 30 times more plastic than their kidneys and liver. That, according to co-lead study author Matthew Camden, Regents Professor and Professor of Pharmaceutical Sciences at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. Concentrations we saw in the brain tissue of normal individuals who had an average age of around 45 or 50 years old were 4,800 micrograms per gram, or 0.48% by weight. Camden said, that's actually kind of shocking. That means 1/20th of your brain is plastic, basically. That's the equivalent of an entire standard plastic spoon he said.
Ugh.
Disgusting.
And these are young people, by the way, Ted. 45 to 55.
Well, they're not young, they're middle-aged, but yeah,
well,
okay.
Yeah. Relative to being 80.
But they're not, well, that's true. Compared to autopsy brain samples from 2016, that's 50% higher. Think about that. From 2016 to 2024, that's just 8 years, 50% increase. That would mean that our brains today are 99.5% brain and the rest is plastic. Researchers also found an additional 3 to 5 times of shard-like plastic fragments in the brains of 12 people who'd been diagnosed with dementia before their deaths compared to healthy brains. Those shards, smaller than the eye can see, were concentrated in the walls of arteries and veins of the brain, as well as in the immune cells of the brain. Oh, what could possibly go wrong? Finding plastic deposits in the brain does not prove they cause damage, says Phoebe Stapleton. Okay, all right. An associate professor. You're not going to ever be full professor if you keep saying things like that. Of pharmacology and toxicology at Rutgers in Piscataway, New Jersey. She wasn't involved in the new study. No, all kidding, Phoebe. I know what you're saying here. By invading individual cells and tissues in major organs, nanoplastics can potentially interrupt cellular processes and deposit endocrine disrupting chemicals like bisphenols. I don't know how to pronounce this. Phthalates, P-H-T.
Oh, phthalates.
Phthalates. Okay, there you go. Flame retardants, heavy metals, and per and polyfluorinated substances, or PFAS. So,
PFAS,
obviously
they make the frogs gay.
I'm not good at biology, and I'm also, but I think anyone can obviously see this is not good for us.
Yeah, for them to say, for that associate professor, whatever she was, to say, well, it's inconclusive.
No, she just said it doesn't prove that it's bad. Point taken. And what that is like
what she's saying.
What she's saying is, hey, we need more funding for another study.
Yes,
and,
I get what she's saying.
I will take that call if you call.
Get what she's saying, but I think we can all agree, without having a PhD in any of this stuff, I think we can all safely conclude that microplastics and nanoplastics have no place in the human body, much less in your brain, and that it probably plays a role in cognitive decline and getting Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Just saying, I'm going to put that out there. I barely got through getting a bachelor's degree, much less a PhD and becoming an MD. So I think there's some common sense there, and some of the legwork that's been done.
Just maybe.
I don't think plastics belong in the human body. That's kind of
going out there on a limb, Jan.
Yeah, I think so. I am.
Let's jaws this shit. Let's do it.
I dare.
You dare. Dispirited and depressed, the Democratic Party does not have a target audience, a message to send it to, or a strategy to oppose Trumpism. Highlighting their dismal situation, new ideas were notably missing at a recent election for new DNC chair, where party insiders insisted that Biden and Harris actually ran great campaigns that failed to get their great message across to the voters, and that nothing should fundamentally change. Meanwhile, Trump's MAGA Republicans are manic and energized, running roughshod over institutional and constitutional norms and capturing our national attention. Can a major political party survive without a core constituency or firm ideological underpinnings? Is waiting for Trump to overreach, provoke a backlash, or die a feasible strategy? Or will Democrats just go the way of the Whigs? Let's talk about the future of the Democrats. Is there one? If so, what does it look like? Joining us is Scott Stantis, editorial cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune, creator of the comic strip Prickly City, contributor to Center Clip, winner of the Sigma Delta Chi Journalism Award, and co-host of the DMZ America podcast with me, Ted Rall. We do one roughly every week, sometimes more often, sometimes less often, but usually once a week. Scott, as always, thanks for joining us here on the TMI show. And here's wishing you accolades that don't start with C's for your biographies, so that you will not have everything be, Chicago, comic, Prickly City, Center Clip.
Well, thanks. And thanks for having me on, guys. The nanoplastics apparently have infused themselves in the brains of the Democratic Party.
No proof that altered anything, though, Scott.
No, absolutely. Well, there's no proof. There's no proof that Kamala Harris did not run the perfect campaign. There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that Kamala Harris ran the best campaign in the history of campaigning, except for the facts. Other than those,
except for the election results, nothing points to this campaign not being good.
I'm going to use scientific methods. I mean, this is not the show for that, guys. Just saying.
Right.
This is evidence.
And the fact that the DNC. I mean, okay, let's take half a step back. Yeah, they lost to Donald Trump. Yeah, and that was because they had a terrible candidate at the top of their ticket. But they're really not in bad shape. If you look at the sheer numbers, two vote difference in the House of Representatives. I mean, it's the thinnest, narrowest margin they've ever had. The Senate's still pretty close. Yes, they don't have the White House and won't have a shot at it again until 19. Gee whiz, be older, Scott. Until 20.
That's the plastics talking.
They've, in terms of what they have done on state levels, they're still doing okay. I mean, this is in terms of is this the Whigs? I mean, if you remember,
they have money. They do have money.
They have tons of money. And
tons of money.
And who can forget the Whigs in 1856? They just...
I was talking about the Federalists earlier. They went away in the late 1800s.
Well, they really didn't organize as a party because they were started by people who didn't want political parties. So that's really not the best, the best seed that you can grow a party from. But the Whigs, they just fell apart. They literally disintegrated. 1856, they didn't even run a candidate. The Republican, that new upstart Republican Party began with Fremont as their candidate, who was, some mentioned, was cuckoo. Apparently that's a thing Republicans have to do.
But they still name a town after you in California if you're cuckoo, apparently.
Yeah, well, he was a former governor. I think he was the territorial governor, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And really an interesting character. Anyway, so the Whigs disappear, become sort of the know-nothings, kind of. Some of those guys go that way. Some of them go Republican. But are the Democrats at that stage? I just don't see that. Although I got to tell you, the Ken Martin, who's the new head of the DNC, headed up the Minnesota Democratic Party, which is probably, what would you guys say, the easiest job in America? Seriously, you're a Democrat in Minnesota.
Right.
Wow. How do you run that party?
Doesn't that mean he was tight with Tim Walz when Walz became the,
Sure.
Yeah, he was
candidate?
Yeah, he was.
Look, he's just, when I look at the screen, I don't know about you guys, but the lady parts over here, woo, I'm so excited.
you get that tingliness that
is it,
love
is it
the
$5
name.
Is it the $5 haircut that gets you, or the
it's the Ted Koppel swoop all the way across? That's for me. It's the ill-fitting blue suit. It's all of that. Just, absolutely. And
now the thing is,
demeanor.
So here's the thing, right? But now here's the thing. By their own account, Scott, the Democrats say, we don't have a message. They said this. They said, they're saying this. And they're saying they're not really sure, how to reach out to the working class, or even if they should even bother to try. Some of them are saying, those guys are gone. We need to find another constituency. So I'm like, okay, so if you don't know who your target audience is, and you don't have a message for said target audience, and you don't have, like I said in the intro, firm ideological underpinnings. Scott, I take your point. The Democratic Party is not going to vanish, not to mention, there's too many institutional supports for it, like in terms of the way the Electoral College is developed. But could the future of the Democratic Party for the foreseeable future be like the minority party in Japan, where you're there and you have seats, but you're never in the majority. You never win. You never have a president. Maybe you have seats out in the hinterlands. You've got some seats in the, in the Vermont legislature, but you're not a dominant national party.
Let's look. there really is. We mentioned history a lot here. We mentioned the Whigs, but we can make it much more recent. Growing up in the 60s and 50s, 60s, 70s, the Republican Party existed. I mean,
for
theory, it was around, but
it had a precedent in 68.
It had precedents, but the legislative, look at the Congress. The Senate was almost always a supermajority Democratic Senate. Mm-hmm. The House was almost always a supermajority Democratic majority in the House. This was growing up. And you looked at it and you said, and this question was asked about the Republican Party over and over again. Does it, will it exist in the next election cycle? Especially after 1974, Nixon resigns, Democrats, just swoop in and just win a massive number of, it was a massive flood of Democratic votes. And the thinking
not really surprising after, the Watergate scandal.
Yeah, no, not at all. Of course not. But my point is,
and the economy was starting to suck too.
The 70s economy was always like 2% GDP growth, right? It was never vigorous.
There was a hint. There was a soupçon of the energy crisis starting to happen in by 74.
Precisely. And like I said, inflation never really cooled beginning in the early 70s. And so the Republican Party, the question was, can it survive? Nixon resigned.
Can the wolf survive, as Los Lobos asked?
I love that song. I love Los Lobos. But the point is, the Republicans have been in the exact same position. Now, can you turn it around quickly? You can. They went from 1974, in 6 short years, they went from, in 1976, Gerald Ford almost won election in his own right, by the way. It was a much closer election than people expected. But in 1980, Republicans, sweep the House, sweep the Senate. They bring in Ronald Reagan. And they don't take it, but they certainly bring in larger numbers and get rid of the supermajorities the Democrats were enjoying. So yeah, you can do this, but but it
was a long road back from 1964.
Well, but they weren't in a dissimilar place. Jerry Ford was a moderate Midwest Republican. Remember those kids when they existed?
I miss them.
So do I. And that kind of plays into my wheelhouse. I'm a small c conservative human being, in that I like incrementalism. I like small changes. And so with Ronald Reagan, I actually worked for the George H.W. Bush campaign in 1980. Yeah, there's two. We literally had a meeting of us in California to run the California campaign. There were 5 of us.
It's a small state, so whatever.
Yeah, to be fair.
Look at this. Marianne Williamson also ran for DNC chair. She obviously lost, and then she endorsed Martin. But to me, obviously she was, how many times was she and also ran herself in the presidential election, right? And every time she says she's something different than, the Democratic Party, and she keeps running on that ticket and keeps insisting she's something different. But then she just, at the end of the day, just falls in line and it's like, I want to be the DNC chair. She keeps saying she has a different message. The same thing as Bernie, 2 or 3 times, saying he has a different message, but then they all fall in line and nothing ever changes. So, is there a change agent in that party? Because I feel like their messaging sucked. It lost. So,
well, Scott, let me elaborate on Manila's question, right? So 1964, Barry Goldwater and the Republicans got shellacked by LBJ. Obviously LBJ had the wind at his sails. He hadn't gotten into Vietnam yet into any significant degree. He obviously had the huge benefit of the sympathy for JFK. Sure. That said, did the Republican Party, did they really realize, oh shit, the lore is, they realized we've got to buckle down. We've got to take over the country from grassroots and take over school boards and state legislatures and slowly build our brand back up. That's the lore. Is that really what happened, or were there people in denial about it in the GOP in the mid 60s who were like, no, we're good. Our message is good. Everything's fine, and maybe took comfort in the Nixon win in 1968.
Well, I think what happened there is the same thing that happened to the Democrats in 72. They just said, we're going to get our asses handed to us. And so why not there's not as much of a bulwark against the radicals in your party. So 64, Republicans nominate Barry Goldwater. 72, Democrats nominate George McGovern. There's going to be part of that. Could that happen in 28 for the Democrats? It all depends on how the next 4 years go. if we come out of it stronger with a better economy, then the Republicans are going to win and the Democrats are going to lose again. You have to decide. Here's the thing, guys. I mean, if you run for office, the reason I got into politics, the reason you guys are involved in this show, the reason, most commentators do is they love politics, but they also believe in something. There are core values. And this is where I think the Democrats have a profound problem. Agreed. In that they can't agree with what their core values are. When I was growing up, my grandfather, hardly a liberal, but still had a photograph in his workshop, still had a photograph of FDR. Mm-hmm. A lot of houses in the United States had that because they, obviously Democratic houses back in the day had the Pope and JFK, if you remember that too.
Yep,
it's so funny walking into the Catholic houses.
I delivered papers to people with wood paneling who had those up on their wall. Yeah,
there it is. Absolutely. So what does the question I would have to my Democratic friends, and I'm a regular, and Ted knows my friend in Chicago, Patty Vasquez, who has a progressive talk radio program. And I bring this up all the time. What do the Democrats stand for? I brought up the old time Democrats who said the Democrats were for the poor and the working class. The Republicans were for the rich.
That's exactly what it was. Joe and Jane Sixpack.
Exactly.
That's always what Democrats were for. Labor, working people, working class people. Yeah.
That's 20th century, though.
That's correct. And
after the Industrial Revolution.
And now I know you were slagging Bernie there, but Bernie did have a correct analysis of what has happened here to the Democratic Party in the Clinton, Bill Clinton, and then his wife.
He never stands against it. After he slags his own party and then says he represents something different, but then when push comes to shove, he just falls back in line and then disappoints all of the young people that had hope coming by way of an 80-year-old.
But here's the thing: he
didn't
have a choice, right? Because basically the Democrats felt that they had a money problem in the 90s, and so they solved that problem by pivoting toward the center and trying to get these big corporate contributions and getting rid of the small donor model. And it's easier to get a check for $1 million than it is to get 1,000 checks for $1,000, right? So, it's why not go out and get that $1 million check from the one person? But then when that person who gave you $1 million calls, you have to take their call. Yes. And that's what happened to the Democrats. They became beholden to big money to the point where now money's really not a problem. Right? They have money because they're in bed with these big corporations more so than the Republicans are, which is shocking to people like Scott and I. That's money. That was not corporate America was firmly under Reagan, let's say, Republican.
Oh, for sure.
And so it was a revolution,
the Industrial Revolution.
But the Democratic Party sold its soul to get that money. And now they don't know what to do because they can't get rid of they can't pivot to the left without losing their donors. I think that's what this is about.
I think that's what this is about.
Do they need it at this point?
Do they need what? Money?
Money?
The donors?
They still like getting
everyone
the
needs money. Yeah.
Well, of course, everyone likes the money, but still.
Well, they found ways to divert it to themselves personally too.
Yes. I mean,
no. Are you saying there's corruption in politics?
I know it's first time ever.
Citizens United, right? I mean, realistically, the interwebs and social media has been, has leveled the playing field where you don't need TV commercials anymore. You really just need to be
right
on social media, and everybody can do that for free.
Donald Trump spent less than a quarter as much as the Democrats did in the last cycle, and in 2016 it was even a bigger, more lopsided.
Oh, it's huge,
massive.
And you're right. The Democratic Party's lurch towards the right, led by the Clintons. I think will be viewed as a fatal mistake. When Hillary said the basket of deplorables, she just said out loud what most of the deplorables thought the Democrats thought of them.
Right.
The Democratic Party has left the FDR coalition. The New Deal coalition is dead. Can you revive it,
or should you?
I don't know. You can do anything, but Ted and I did our podcast, the DMZ America podcast. We talked about the election of Grover Cleveland, and it's really was a fascinating discussion. We came to the conclusion that Cleveland was actually more of a Republican in our way of thinking than he was a Democrat. Mm-hmm. And so Ted would have been all the way with Blaine, and I would have been a Grover Cleveland guy, which I don't know why that makes me giggle, but it does. You can do anything, but it takes time, the ship to turn. I come back to my original point.
Or do you just say this relationship is fucked up? Like the way, like famously LBJ said after he pushed the Civil Rights Act, the Democratic Party has lost the South for a generation or more. In other words, he was like, we're going to have to find our votes elsewhere. Is that where Democrats are?
Yeah, I think that, but who do they find it by? Who's the core constituency right now, guys? I mean, of the Democratic Party. And I hate to use this cliche, but it's apropos. It's a cliche for a reason. It's the Chardonnay swilling country club Democrats, and there just aren't that many of them.
That's exactly the problem.
And by the way, nobody likes them.
And the thing is, and the Electoral College downgrades their votes because they live in the most populous coastal states. So the Electoral College definitely hurts the Chardonnay swilling coastal elites.
And just look at the election map from California. I looked at that recently to see how the counties went. That's shocking. California, for those of us from California, I mean, that's about
2 out of 3 of us, not me.
Yeah, that's about but you've lived there for years too, Ted. So
True.
That's the bluest of blue states. But you look at the county maps. Anything off the coast. I would argue that that's not true.
I would say it's not bluest of blue state, Vermont. Okay, Massachusetts. Okay. It is not as blue as people think. The high Sierras are
big
conservative.
Red pockets.
Yeah, I mean the for a long time San Diego was Republican. Orange County was a bedrock of Republicans.
Yeah, Orange County still is.
Orange County's changing.
It's purple. But what shocked me about this map
and the farm areas.
And even San Francisco had a Republican former police chief as mayor, so it can, and California has
when people have had enough of the bullshittery, they will vote to actually get some level of sanity in there. But my point was that even in California, any county off the coast they were red. It was really, I'd never seen, and I worked in California politics in the 70s, which
that did not
in early 80s.
No.
This was not the case by a long shot. And now, so coming back again to no one can answer this. Let me tell a very quick story. During the past election, a friend of mine, high-ranking Democratic operative, I've mentioned this to Ted several times, gave me a call out of the blue just to shoot the breeze about a month before the election. And we talked about this and that and the other thing. But the most telling thing he said was when we were talking about Kamala, he says, I still don't know how she will govern. This was a month before the election, and a guy who was close friends with the Bidens, with all the Democrats across the country. This is someone who's steeped in this stuff deeper, maybe even than us, who didn't know how Kamala Harris would govern. And I think that's a common perception of Americans today of the Democratic Party. I don't know what I'm going to get. They have to find 2, 3, 4 issues that define them. And I can't think of what those issues could possibly be other than, and we talk about Bernie. Bernie could, and if you watched Bernie run for president, he had substantive ideas of what he stood for.
He followed the rule of 3, right? He had, and we all know what they are, right? $15 an hour minimum wage, which frankly is too low now, because he started this a long time ago.
10 years ago.
A long time ago. And then also the student loan forgiveness and Medicare for all. I mean, we can, and I'm not going to get into the merits of them, but the point is that the fact that we know them meant he was an effective bumper sticker candidate.
Yes.
And
they don't have that. They don't have that anymore. Not. And they're not going to find it in Ken Martin. He's not going to galvanize the young people.
He's not going to excite the youngsters.
He's just not. I don't know where the young people go with. I mean, sure, they're stuck with the blue, right? With the blue team. But I would argue.
Wait, they are what?
Well, because there's just no alternative. If you believe in, if you care about, abortion, trans stuff and abortion and whatever. But I would argue that the new cool young people have wafted over to the Republican side because of the, we have discussed this, like the manosphere and male, these like bro influencers on the Trump side.
I agree with that.
So you're seeing a lot of young men going that way. And, when you see young, buff, young men head over somewhere, who soon follows? Cute, young, attractive girls start following that way too, because cute young girls like good-looking, buff young men, and that's how you start. And I'm
interesting.
serious.
Well, some of them like each other, but what about? But what about?
I don't know how cute those ones are.
But I'm going to say one thing, Scott. I don't know if you agree with me, Manila. I'm interested in your view on this too. I mean, the basically one takeaway post-mortem from 2024 is this was a change election. Democrats didn't realize it was a change election. That's why they went on joy. I'm going to argue every change is a change election when a country is in crisis and the country is in the middle of a lot of people don't understand that this is like whatever latest crisis happens to be on voters' minds, whether it's the price of eggs or it's COVID or it's, whatever. The point is this country is like spiraling down the drain. Trump kind of understands that, and his people understand that. And so you need to run like every election is a change election, and whoever brings the message of disruption and throwing out everything, including maybe throw out the baby with the bathwater, is going to win, I think.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I think this revolution. I mean, Ted, you and I both are students of revolution, or you're more so than I am. But if you look at and read about revolutions in the 19th and 20th centuries, they don't happen when things are really bad or when they're at their worst.
No,
it's when they're coming back up. And that's where we are. And that's what Trump is. He's a revolutionary force. And that appeals to young people. It appealed to me when I was in high school and early in college. I mean, I was a libertarian. I was a flame-throwing libertarian, and the government's no good. I still feel that way. That sentiment hasn't gone away. But for the Democrats, they have to excite. I mean, look at the numbers from this past election. That's why I brought up California. 7 to 11, I don't think the number as high as Ted quotes is 20 million, but it certainly is between 7 and 11 million voters, fewer Democratic voters voted in 24 than in 2020. That's massive. That's how
more than enough to make the difference, right?
And that's how young people vote. They don't vote. They largely, in large numbers, do not vote. You have to excite them and get them. And here's the thing: saying we're not Trump is clearly not the selling point they think it is. It's just not enough. And clearly, I mean, when you have Donald Trump actually winning the majority of the vote, doing very well in the Electoral College. They're looking at that going, oh, okay, this is mainstream. You may not like it. There are elements of it I clearly don't like. That doesn't matter. It's successful. And the Democrats are just wallowing and not saying anything. I mean, I would love to look at them and say, wow, that's a real alternative, but it's not, other than we're not Trump and we won't be a rubber stamp for Trump. Is that enough? I don't believe that it is. You have to tell me what you believe in.
And so far, they appear to be a rubber stamp for Trump. They voted unanimously for Marco Rubio.
Well, but look, guys, is this going to be the gateway to hell? No, the gateway to the third parties, fourth parties, fifth parties. Is this where we break the duopoly because of the Democratic Party's ineptitude in recognizing their own fallibility and they're them being so full of themselves because their coffers are full, right? They think because their coffers are full that people want to buy the bullshit that they're selling, and that's not true. That's just simply, I mean, they as a party were roundly rejected in November. It'd be one thing if they won the popular vote, but they didn't do that either, right? So is this then now finally an opening that voters around the country, especially the next go around, people that are now 18 today that couldn't vote, in November because they just turned 18, they'll be young adults the next go around. They'll be in their early 20s. Is this the perfect window for the young people to look at the third party, the fourth party.
It has been. It's been since 2016 when you had, the rise of Jill Stein was performing well in the polls, and especially Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate, was performing very well until the Hillary campaign, turned its evil eye of Sauron on them and destroyed their campaigns and destroying herself as well. I believe it has been the libertarian moment for years. Ted and I have talked about, endlessly about third parties. Is this the time to rise of the third party? And I think in terms of younger Democratic voters, I believe the Green Party, if it rose and showed itself to be a serious party, very much like the Libertarian Party, whenever it has that position, to do something, always like shows itself to be bat crap crazy. It's that's the moment they tend to run around.
I don't know, Scott.
I like cheese.
Even Cornel West was not able to make it work inside the Green Party in the last cycle, and he said they were too crazy for him. Okay.
Too crazy. Oh God.
He did say that. This is so, and I love Dr. West. Don't get me wrong. I love Dr. I really
West.
do. Dr.
Good vibes.
He's great. Yeah. He's a really excellent person. But I mean, I look. Here's the thing. I think there's two main subjects there, right? There's the question of can people get past the two-party trap and vote third party? I don't think so now. I used to think that they could. Really? It's very clear that the propaganda has been so effective over the years that we're no longer in a place where people, like the most recent time it really happened in any serious number was under Ross Perot in 1992, who got almost 20% of the vote. We're not going to see that anymore. I mean, because everybody's been convinced that they're wasting their vote if they don't vote for the winner. I just came across a fascinating study, Scott, that I was meaning to mention to you, and I'll send you the link. It's a white paper. It's about the bandwagon effect in politics. Apparently, if the polls show, all things being even, if polls show that candidate A is more likely to win than candidate B, 6% of the electorate will switch over and support candidate A. So people want to vote for the winner. And it goes further than that. People who will switch from B to A, they will do that even if they prefer candidate B and they agree with candidate B's policies more, because they think it's better for the country to be all on the same page. So there's the bandwagon effect is a major thing in electoral politics. I'll send it to you. It's really interesting.
It's enough to shift
granular. So,
6%
is a lot.
5 or 6%
in America.
That's enough to shift.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, so if 6% of vote moves, that can create a 12% differential, right? So that's massive.
Well, look, since RFK, and I'll make this our last issue or topic on the matter, then we'll call it a day.
One more thing I wanted to say, but go ahead.
Oh, tied to this, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, so I don't think that I think, Scott, tell me what you think about this. I think that if there is hope, as Orwell would say in 1984, it lies with the proles. If there's hope, it's going to be a top-down thing where a segment of the Democratic leadership, they decide we can't play like the progressives say we can't play with the corporatists, or vice versa. The corporatists say we can't play with the progressives, and they decide to break away and create a new formation and split the party entirely. I think that can work. That's the only possibility. Is if they just say we're taking our half of that billions of dollars that we have, and then the voters will follow them, because we don't have bottom-up politics in the U.S. We have top-down politics.
What I was going to interject and say was about RFK Jr., given that he's just passed the Senate hurdle to go to the floor. But when he was running as a Democrat originally to challenge Biden, right, 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, he really came out of the gates just smoking. He was
20%.
He had big numbers, and the DNC began the thing that they do, and they just kind of clamped down, and obviously pushed him out. They did this and then went and popped him out of the back end, and he had to become independent, right? They forced him out of the party. But I think that within those people that identify as Democrats, I think that strong showing for him so early on shows that there is, to Ted's point, what he's saying here, that there is a fracture within the Democratic side, and that there are people that really want to break free, but not be a Republican and not be a libertarian and not be a crazy green. They still want to be, I don't know, they want to hang on to like a shade.
And let's go the other way too. Don't forget, I mean, like I'm always, as a lefty, thinking, fuck the corporatists. But the corporatists also hate the left. And they might just say, like, we'll purge the party. They've already purged the party of leftist candidates. Like they're not allowed anymore in the Democratic primaries or anything like that. And they're being purged from leadership positions. So the next step logically is to purge them to change their message to the center, more to the right, and then and just become more of a conservative party like Republican light, and then kick everyone else out. And that could happen. And then there'd be room for a new progressive party.
Yeah.
I don't think any of these things are going to happen. I think the long-term minority status is more likely.
Yes. And until they get a charismatic leader who ascends, who we don't see right now, we might see in the next few years, could be a dark horse in 28, but the Republicans are going to be in good shape. They obviously have a nominee in Vance, who I think will be a formidable candidate, quite frankly.
Agreed.
But like you said, I think they're going to be wandering in the wilderness for a while, looking for something. And somebody like a Democrat Reagan, tumbleweed.
I don't think they have anybody. I mean, I feel like we're looking at the Democrat stable, and that stable is bare, guys. I mean, Gavin Newsom, they thought might be somebody. They ponied him out.
I think Pete Buttigieg is the best thing they've got right now.
Ooh.
Well, but you've got right on the heels of his tenure, you have two major aircraft disasters. So, and they can stick that to Buttigieg. Now, whether or not that's his fault, is arguable. But I don't know that. I think that really tarnished his brand, Ted. I was with you for a while, but now I don't think so. I don't see that. I thought Whitmer, governor.
Whitmer?
Governor of Michigan, 2 terms, pretty popular there.
Fake kidnap? I don't know. Help, I'm going to be a kidnap victim.
Yeah, kind of like a lie. It's not really kind of. It was a lie.
That's like a chick sending herself Valentine's.
She's she's our new Tawana Brawley.
It's just I really don't see it.
They wanted to hurt me.
Yeah, I really don't see it from the Democratic Party, and not to say that I see who the clear and upcoming heir apparent is for the Republicans either. I mean, I would
Vance,
it's
absolutely.
Vance. I would
absolutely
assume.
Vance. Yeah,
but he's extremely impressive. The question is as a candidate and all that. The question is, can he become the dauphin of the MAGA movement? I don't know about that. He
doesn't have the je ne sais quoi
for MAGA. I mean, or can he create his own thing?
I think he'll create his own thing.
Like a more intellectual Republican Party.
Well, slightly. I mean, politics. Come on. Have you seen the school test scores? By the way, the national.
We talked about it the other day. Yeah.
We don't read, and we can't do the math. So
we would have poll results that would show how retarded we are, but we can't count them.
But no one can read it or understand the graph.
or add the numbers.
It's 7 of one and half a dozen of another. That's all I have to say about that. God, it's really bad, man. It's really bad. When we can't read or do math, we pretty much become cats.
Hey.
That's okay with that.
Watch it. Watch it there.
That's okay with that.
Cat hate. Philophobe.
Let's leave that there. I'm going to say the argument it's up for debate still. I think everybody on the blue team is kind of rudderless, even though they picked this new dude.
Oh, there's no question.
He seems kind of unimpressive.
And he would not even. I mean, okay. Oh, sorry, Scott. I do have to ask you this one question. I'm sorry, Manolo.
We're never leaving.
We're never leaving. So what struck me about the fact that the new chair said there was nothing wrong with Biden running again. That was a fine decision, and Harris did everything great. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, sure. So all right, never mind. Obviously, we know that he's either like the biggest liar or the biggest idiot or both. We don't know which. But aside from that, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, right? It's a major problem when a party or any institution, a company, whatever, is unable to get new information that runs counter to their narrative, and then not information that they don't like, hear it, receive it, and internalize it and respond to it. When you can't do that, you're kind of unable to adapt and evolve. Am I wrong?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it applies to a lot of companies. How is Sears not Amazon? Because Sears didn't see the internet. They didn't utilize it in a serious way until it was too late. The Democratic Party is, you can say, without being disparaging, you can still say they were shitty candidates. You can say Kamala Harris ran the best campaign she possibly could.
And that's true.
That's how you can word it like that. But don't tell me she was the best. We've had someone.
She should never have been chosen she never ever should have been chosen for vice president.
How did this become a speaking point, guys? How did this become a speaking point for the Democrats? And Ted and I can tell you from our Democratic friends, we've heard this more than once from more than one source. Kamala Harris was the best candidate they ever. Joe Biden was the best president we've had in the 20th century. This is
period. Punctuation.
Someone said ever. We have friends who literally said ever. And I'm like,
Kamala Harris,
she ran. You think Biden was better than Thomas Jefferson or Abe Lincoln? Really?
Yeah. And that Kamala Harris ran, quote, and I'm not making this up, this clearly comes from Democratic headquarters, a perfect campaign. Mm-hmm. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, no, over and over and over. We're
evidence, and you can say it over and over, and it's not true because it's empirically not true. No, you know why? Because there's no President Kamala.
Right.
That is why.
And these people, you guys know them to know well enough to know that they're being genuine.
Yes.
When they say this.
Mm-hmm.
They're being fed the Democratic speaking points and the marching orders, and that's what they're told to say. And that's
in their heart of hearts, they believe.
I think they believe it. I think they would pass. I think they would pass a reliable truth serum. Yeah.
Oh my God! Wow. Well, this is a case of drink the Kool-Aid. This is and that's why they're in Jonestown. This is why they got murdered on November 4th. This is exactly what happened.
That's true. They're lying. Their bloated bodies are lying in the Guianese jungle.
And they're still like, like we believe. We need to. Just drink this blue stuff. Drink it.
I didn't really realize. I read about that recently. I didn't realize that Jonestown, that this was a socialist experiment. I didn't really realize that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
what a weird
socialism doesn't always go well.
No kidding.
Scott, always fun having you on
guys.
Because it's not only smart, but we get to laugh and because we know you. So, of course, Scott Stantis is a cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune. He's the creator of the comic strip Prickly City. He's a contributor to Center Clip, winner of the Sigma Delta Chi Journalism Award, and, of course, co-host with Ted there at the DMZ America podcast. Always a good time. Thank you, our friend.
Thanks,
I'm going to say
Bye,
our
Scott.
friend.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we're friends. Yeah, I think we can say that now.
We're friends.
We
can come out of the closet.
Were we ever in? Well, we were. Yeah, we were.
Thanks, Scott.
All right.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye. All right, he's always a blast. Okay, so that's going to do it for us, Ted.
We should. The DNC should watch that. I mean, they'd learn a few things.
Ted, but if you actually think that your shit don't stink, if you're that arrogant, you're not gonna pay. You're not gonna listen. Period. I mean, you and I, we know enough people to know that there are arrogant people out there that don't realize how fucked up they are because they're so arrogant that even if you tell them how they failed, they're gonna be like, "No, you're the fucking idiot."
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So okay, let them drive their car off a cliff and maybe then they'll figure it out. Maybe too late, but oh well. Yeah. Oh well is all I got to say.
At a certain point, they will figure it out. And also, it's true. the Republicans will fuck up. It's sort of like it's just inevitable. So that's, if you're a Democrat, that's the hope that you have. I mean, look, if anyone's in danger of overreach, it's Donald Trump.
In 2028, I'm in team no hope. So my posters everywhere are going to say
certainly not
no
from,
hope.
Not from these two political parties. No question.
All right, guys, that does it for us. Make sure you guys hit the like, follow, subscribe button, all of that. Please share us on your social media. Just repost it if you're watching on Twitter.
Indeed,
make it so much easier on X or whatever. I'm dead naming whatever. Thank you, guys. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Always appreciate you guys being there. The Rumble Room, keeping it spicy, and not to be forgotten, you YouTube folks. Thank you so much for getting
and the X people. Thank you, and all the audio people.
Audio people. I always forget the audio.
And the
people.
cats, and the dogs. We love the dogs too.
Yeah, well, people need to leave us on for their pets on loop. We have a library now. We have a library. We have a collection. Just leave us on for your cats and dogs.
They say that your dog and your cat will love you more if
it's true.
If they
Science
play this.
is proven.
Yeah, there are several white papers that I've made up that say that.
That's right. That's right. All right, guys. We'll see you here tomorrow. Hasta mañana. Thank you.
Bye, Manila. Bye, everyone.
Bye.